Scary stories, custom costumes, a lot of candy, a lot of cool crafts, and of course, awesome decorations. In addition, I am Hispanic from Mexican descent, so we're gonna also celebrate Dia de los Muertos, and we're gonna be doing that in this video. We partner up once again with Kustom Controllers, and this particular controller is going to be sent out to AEW's wrestler Serpentico, and we're going to do a good job painting some cool sugar skulls and some awesome flowers. This time around, we're going to go ahead and do the majority of the work with a regular brush and regular paint. The paint that I'm using is actually the same paint that I use for the airbrush. It's all acrylic. It's just a little bit watered down, so we're going to put several layers down than just your normal thick acrylic. Alright, and here's the mock-up that we received. It looks like a lot, but in reality it's not. It's the background that has a lot of information on there, but the controller itself is fairly very well laid out. We're going to have some flowers and then some sugar skulls on the controller with a few letters and text, and we're going to be doing that with vinyl. So let's go ahead and get started. I went ahead and prep the plastic with 220 sandpaper, and then following it with a Scotch-Brite green color pad, and that kind of helps me remove any additional plastic that's on there, and it'll help me kind of give it an additional sanding, so I have two different different grips that the paint can bite into. So we're gonna go ahead and spray everything with primer. Autoborne Sealer is the main paint that I use when I first start painting any type of plastic, and then on top of that we're gonna add some black and get it ready for the actual paint. If you guys know me already, you guys know that I love listening to scary stories, not only during Halloween season but all year long, and I'm not really sure what's wrong with me, but I love listening to them before I go to sleep. It really calms me down. I don't know why, especially the ones from Mexico. So while we paint, maybe I can let you guys know some scary stories. So I like to listen to just a bunch of general, weird stories, mysteries and stuff like that. I listen to Wendigo stories and Men in Black, Kids with Black Eyes. But in today's video, we're doing Mexico style Dia de los Muertos controller. So let's go ahead and visit some stories from Mexico City that you might not heard of. Alright, we have finished prepping the controller. We're gonna add a little bit of gloss on it. This way it kind of protects the black paint that we've already added on there, just in case we need to go back in here and use some sort of stencil for some reason, but I don't think we will, but you just want to make sure we protect it before we go on. So in Mexico we have a lot of legends, and the majority of these stories take place in rural areas, and sometimes they take place in actual large cities, which is kind of weird. My favorite stories are the ones that come from either police or like firefighters or military personnel. Those types of stories kind of you have a person that's there as like a higher ranking, very militant person, is ready for war, but they experience something weird paranormal out in the woods, which is kind of weird to listen to a story from them, since they're just used to like hardcore adventures and stuff like that, and that's why I really like those type of stories. The few legends that we have are La Llorona, which is the crying lady. The story goes that she drowned her kids, or her kids drowned, and she ran up and tried to save them, and she just cried so much. She eventually, I guess, committed suicide, and just roams around Mexico, and you hear the crying of her, and the story goes that, or the legend goes, that if you hear her from far away, that means she's actually really close. Or if you really listen to her and she sounds like she's really close, she's actually far away. But there is a couple of videos online. If you do some research, you can actually hear people recording. Nowadays everybody has a phone, so they record the sound of La Llorona. Sometimes they have captured certain lady, you know, wearing a white gown in the street in the middle of like the forest and stuff like that. So that's one of the legends that Mexico has. Other mysteries that happen in Mexico is obviously El Chupacabra, which is the goat sucker. So essentially it's like this animal, they can't figure out what it is. It's attacking like goats, smaller animals, and it's kind of like it's almost like a vampire. It's like sucking the blood out of these animals and killing them, destroying them, eating some parts and stuff like that. So a lot of farmers have been complaining. They've been you know, trying to hunt this particular animal. They don't know what it is, how big it is, but you know, there's been cases where they found their goats and their livestock dead. So we're gonna go ahead and start laying down a white base for the color that's gonna go on top of it. I'm gonna try to do 1 or 2 layers of the white. This way it looks, you know, has a nice base. This way the color really pops. Other legends coming out from Mexico are the witches, las brujas, and the story goes that there's always like, you know, these, they don't know what they are. They're like, they come down from the mountain. They're like 3 glowing lights, and when they actually stop and you kind of see them, they actually turn into like these horrific like looking ladies with barely have like hair, and they look really gross as far as their faces goes, and they have like, they obviously really stink and smell, and they you know, they wear like, you know, old clothing and stuff like that. So essentially what happens is a lot of these witches or brujas, they will come from the mountain and try to steal babies, and what they do is they try to, you know, they eat the babies. They take them and they you know, they eat the babies and children and stuff like that. So there's been a lot of cases. There was a case where they actually called the police. The police came over, and this is a story from an actual police officer where they got to the location, and you know, the people were crying out loud that, you know, there was a witch that came in that stole the baby and stuff like that. So luckily they were around the corner and they were able to see something that was jumping from tree to tree, and they couldn't make it out. So they started running after it, and there was a couple of police officers, you know, they had their cars and stuff like that, so they were trying to locate this person, and they actually were able to like surround it because it stopped in one of the trees, and they couldn't get it down, and finally they shot it, and they heard a loud scream, and next thing you know, it dropped like some sort of a blanket with something inside, and you saw the thing kind of like it did like a giant jump into like another tree and just took off. Well, what was in the blanket, it was an actual baby, and nothing happened to the baby. I mean, it was hurt because it kind of fell from the tree, but other than that, it you know, survived and stuff like that. But it was just one of those stories that came from an actual police officer that saw this and actually drew their weapon and shot this thing that's, you know, they're like, what the heck is this? But it turned out that, you know, people were talking, they're like, yeah, that's a bruja, you know, that's a witch. And that's what they do. They come, and at night, especially when like kids are not baptized or anything like that, that's what, you know, the legend goes, that, you know, they're not baptized or they're not well taken care of, or they're just left alone for long periods of time. You know, these witches come from the mountain and they take them. So that's one of the stories that I heard that was kind of like, you know, kind of interesting, and it was like, oh man, that's kind of weird coming from a cop. Another legend that happens in Mexico that's well talked about and a lot of people know about it is the fact that there's like gnomes in the forest. So there's a variety of different type of gnomes. They call them duendes. Some of the duendes tend to be you know, they tend to be kind of funny looking, kind of chubby, and they tend to play around and try to mess with you. They try to hide things from you. They make noises, try to scare you. So in essence, they're just trying to, like, you know, mess with you. But if you happen to capture one or give it some sort of candy or allow it to come into your house, you can actually ask the duende to go get you stuff. Like, you can actually tell it to go bring you money or bring you good luck, or tell it to you know, bring you more success in your business, and it'll do it for you, except you have to always give it some sort of treat. So the only issue with that type of situation is that you can't ever get rid of it. So you would have to, carry it and give it treats for the rest of your lives. If you try to get rid of it, it'll turn back on you, and will definitely be upset. So another thing is they call them chaneques, duendes. They're like the chaneque. Well, the chaneques are different than the duendes. The chaneques, they're more evil, I guess, and they live in the forest. They tend to try to lose people in the forest. They show them different ways, or they mess with your mind, so you always get lost. And they always target like either females or older males or children. And usually what happens if sometimes they get lost, they never come back to town. And a lot of people say that the chaneques got them. And there's been a lot of stories that are kind of weird, where like you'll find or people have found little shoes, little outfits, or people have actually seen the chaneques and were lucky enough to come back to town and tell their stories. So actually in some cities in Mexico, they're so they believe so much in the chaneques that when they build, like, let's say a building or a bridge, they'll create some sort of altar for the chaneques. This way it's kind of like an offering, saying, hey, if you guys give us permission to build this thing, because normally what happens is they've tried to build a certain bridge several times, and it keeps coming down. It just something happens, it just gets destroyed, never works out, because the chaneques are not happy that we're kind of taking over their land. So usually this happens in the peninsula of Mexico City, kind of like by Yucatan and Cancun. The chaneques are kind of well known in those areas. So that's another legend that's kind of interesting to me. I'm going to be adding several layers of the same color. This way we have a nice coverage, and then we're going to come back with a different shade of the same color, just to give it an extra like a 3-dimension more. This way it looks like it's popping out a little bit more. So I'll either go dark of the same color, and then at the end we're just going to come back with some highlights of white, and try to get that to stand out even more. So going back to the stories, it's just crazy to me to think that all around the world there's always some sort of paranormal thing or legend that's been happening everywhere in the world, no matter where you are. And it's always like you got the cryptids, you got UFOs, you got paranormal ghost stories, or just in general just crazy stuff. And there's thousands and thousands of stories from multiple people and across the world, the nations, everywhere. Even if they're all fake, which is unlikely, right? Even if one of the stories is true, that should scare the hell out of you, because that's just weird. No matter which story it is, even just one of them, it's super crazy to think that really happened. So if you're from a different country, or just in general from the States, if you've had any paranormal thing happen to you, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear about your story. Just make it short and quick. This way we can get the overview, the footnotes or cliff notes of your story. That'll be kind of fun to read through the comments. So going back to the stories in Mexico, I mean, we have the traditional, scary stories like the seeing ghosts, or apparitions and stuff like that. My favorites are the people that see weird things while driving in the middle of nowhere. So like truck drivers and bus drivers, and just people in general just driving in their normal car, that they see weird things. One of the stories that I remember listening to is a story of a truck driver that was carrying cattle from one place to the other one, and his only job is to go pick up the cattle, He doesn't even load them up. They load them up for him, and all he has to do is just drive it to the next town, and they unload everything for him, and that was it. So what happened while driving is that he heard like this weird noise and couldn't figure out what it was. Some of the cows were kind of screaming and stuff like that, so he was kind of like, hey, I wonder what's happening. So he went ahead and pulled over and really didn't notice anything. So it just looked like the cows were a little like, you know, kind of rattled, I guess. So when he got to the location and dropped everything off, one of the guys that unloaded all the cattle asked his driver like, what happened to this particular one. And there was one that was kind of mutilated and was hurt, like, you know, it had like a couple bites and stuff like that, and it looked pretty bad. And the driver's like, no, like, I checked every single cattle that went on the truck, and everyone seemed pretty well. And then so he was just kind of like weirded out by it. Next time, because he had to do these runs every so often, next time he had a run, he wanted to pay attention to make sure that every single cattle was okay, because he didn't want to get in trouble. So he went ahead and did that and took off. And midway through traveling in the middle of nowhere, he felt something like clench or like grab the side of the truck, and he heard all the cattle like yelling and screaming and kicking and stuff like that. And he pulled over real quick. He stopped the truck, got out, had a flashlight, and he noticed a human-sized person, like 6 foot or whatever, with very long hands and feet. He was kind of like naked, I guess. Had a lot of like hair. It kind of looked human, but it wasn't human. It literally like figured out a way to get inside the truck, and was it had attacked one of the cows, climbed out. He was looking at all of this, and climbed out and saw him jump from the truck to the side of the road and took off in the middle of the the forest. So he was kind of like scared about that, but after he was able to get on his truck and kind of leave the area, he then got to the town and noticed that he got off and noticed and checked the truck. He noticed there was claw marks on the side of the truck, like this thing had jumped from the forest. It ran really fast and was able to jump onto the truck, and the claw marks were still there. Got inside the truck, because those are kind of open, they're kind of vented for the cows to be able to breathe. And yeah, they found blood and some hair and stuff like that of that creature trying to squeeze in there. And it was just weird. It's a weird story to know that there's things out there that can attack you, and it's just, he just didn't know what it was. It kind of looked like a human, but it ran on all fours, and it had long hands and feet, and it was just like a weird story. And that's one of the stories I kind of remember, and it's just kind of weird and kind of unique story. Alright guys, and we are pretty much done with the painting. I'm gonna go ahead and clear this with several coats of clear. This way we can get rid of like the different heights of the paint, the variation of paint. So I'm gonna try to bury all that stuff with the clear. I'm gonna be sanding the clear every so often. This way I can continue kind of sanding it down. This way we get it nice and smooth. And at the end I'm just gonna apply a little bit of wax. This way it has a nice feel to it, and we should be good to go. So let me go ahead and do that, and let's go ahead and take a look at the final results. Hopefully you guys enjoy the little stories that I have for you. I'm going to be doing more hopefully this in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully you enjoy, and let's go ahead and take a look at the final results. Well guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video. The fact that the colors are glowing, and the black light is actually a kind of like a, not a surprise, but it was unintentional. I wanted to make this controller nice and bright, because in our culture we like things nice and bright and a lot of colors. So I wanted to make sure I used the colors that are super bright. So I went ahead, go ahead and use all my fluorescent colors that I had. And when I went to shine the black light on it, I just noticed that everything was glowing, which is an extra bonus. It came out really nice, and it was unintentional, but it came out really cool. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take it easy for now. Bye. Si no te portas bien, el cucuy te va a jalar las patas.